Welcome back to the Give Me Liberty podcast of the Standing for Freedom Center at Liberty University, where we defend life, liberty, and truth to ensure the foundations of freedom exist for the next generation. I'm joined by a very special guest. He's pastor of Christ Church in Moscow, Idaho, Doug Wilson.
Good to be with you.
Great to see you again.
Yes.
I was just up in your neck of the woods a few months ago, or maybe it was last month.
Yeah.
And got to see your stomping grounds.
Yeah.
And first of all, very impressed with everything that Canon Plus is doing, Canon Press. Certainly impressed with New St. Andrews, and that's coming from Liberty University.
Yeah.
Love what I saw there. And then of course, your team is a stellar team.
That's great. Yeah.
And so here we are. We're right on the cusp of the anniversary of our nation, 250th anniversary.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of confusion. There's a fractious divide, and I think there's distraction among conservatives,
right,
so-called, over what the definition of conservative is. There's co-belligerents among us that have not always been our allies, probably won't be,
right,
but are willing to move the ball forward on certain things that we agree on. But there's a big debate right now over how do we treat Israel, how do we treat our Jewish neighbor, and that seems to be a big problem.
Right, it's a big problem.
Yes,
but it's not as big as it appears. Okay, so you're exactly right that there are tensions and fissures in the conservative movement, and people think that it's over Israel, and I don't think it really is. Okay. Because I think the conservative movement is resilient enough and big enough to house different opinions over Israel. Okay, it's a foreign policy thing. It's how much foreign aid, if any, should be going to Israel. Should we be giving foreign aid to anybody? There's all sorts of complicated.
Thomas Massey is my congressman in Kentucky, and as his stance is, we shouldn't be giving it to anyone.
That solves all the problems.
Sure, yeah,
and that's where I am actually.
Yeah.
But those are political questions, and it's all the normal churn politically. But the current energy that is fueling the debate over Israel is the energy that's coming, frankly, from Candace, who is alleging that the organization that sponsored this conference had a hand in Charlie Kirk's murder.
Right.
Right. That's not a political issue.
Right.
Right. And then the people who are outraged by that, it's the people who are alleging that try to tuck that issue under differences of opinion over Israel. But it doesn't go there. That's not where it's filed, right? So they're completely different issues in completely different universes.
Yes.
So the conservative movement is big enough to say, I think Israel is an important ally in the Middle East. No, I don't think that. Great. We can handle that. We can budget for that. But you can't have the premier conference of the conservative movement that isn't a politicians' conference. This is a private organization.
It's a populist thing.
A populist thing. You can't have conservatives alleging that the people running the biggest conservative operation in America are murderers.
Right.
That's not. You can't paper over that.
That's right.
And then if someone calls you on it and says, "What are you doing?" Then someone says, "I just want to raise questions about Israel." Well, no, that's not a question. Number one, and it's not about Israel. Number two, you're talking about something else.
Yes, it is kind of maddening. I mean, I saw the Pierce Morgan interview, and Candace, it's been many years. Once upon a time, she had some interactions with Liberty University, never really with the Freedom Center, but she literally said, everything but calling Erica Kirk by name, but basically saying that Erica Kirk had a hand in assassinating her own husband. It's just ridiculous. And then they were complicit in whatever that was. And then Pierce Morgan called her on it, and she said, no, I never said that. I was talking about cover-up or something else.
Yeah.
And they literally have the videotape of this. And it's crazy.
It's crazy, and it's not about Israel. That's the thing. So people are going to, and when people are outraged, so for example, Ben Shapiro spoke at this talk. I think his level of ticked offness came from the Candace thing, but then it spilled out over into the differences over Israel thing.
Right.
And so I would urge everybody to keep the issues distinct. They're different issues. Don't let your outrage on the one slop over into the other.
That's right. Now, I will say this. If I were, you go back to, I guess, the opening night, what was it, Thursday night, if there was like an applause meter and I'm listening to Ben right after Erica, I heard more noise of applause and enthusiasm for saying the things that were not said by any Christian yet. There's a guy in a yarmulke saying it. And then when Tucker got up there, he said a few things, and there were some obviously fans in the room. I've always been appreciative of Tucker, but it was not near as much enthusiasm, and it was sort of dying throughout the night. But like, I think a lot of people said, after finally somebody said what Ben Shapiro said, but my goodness, why did it take so long for somebody to say it, and why did it have to be the Ben to be the first one to say it?
Yeah, right.
It had to be the Jewish guy.
Yeah, right. So I think that the Turning Point people are trying to be good Christians.
Yeah.
I think they're at their limit, and they were going to do all the refutation, and then the meeting happened, and then having a private meeting with Candace, I think, is like a ceasefire with Hamas.
Right.
That didn't last long, but I think it's that we're coming to the point of closure. There has to be closure on this, and I'm grateful that he said it. And judging from my panel discussion here, there was a lot of energy in the room.
Yeah.
On Israel, pro and con, but that kind of energy is a good political debate.
Right.
That's what makes politics go.
Right.
But whether or not the person you're talking to ought to be charged by the cops with murder, that's in a different category.
Okay, so here's something, because I had this conversation with Charlie back in July, and Charlie was very clear. He loves Israel as a place to visit. He loves the ancestral lands, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. He loves the fact that he can go to these places and say, yeah, this is where these things happened. And just like every good American, he is pro-Israel. Now, he said to me on our podcast, that does not mean that I agree with the Knesset on everything.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that I withhold criticism when they do bad things. That doesn't mean that it is blanket, unqualified support for Benjamin Netanyahu and his government. He makes mistakes all the time, maybe twice on Sunday, but he would say the same thing about Joe Biden.
Yeah.
And so if I'm an American and I can criticize my own government, I'm a Christian, and I can criticize my own government. Can I criticize the government of Israel and still be a good Christian?
Well, it's obvious. So Israeli elections are close, right? Half of Israel thinks of Benjamin Netanyahu the way Democrats think about Donald Trump, right? Half of Israel. That might make them mistaken or leftists or whatever, but they're certainly not anti-Semitic.
Right. That's right.
They're Israeli citizens voting in an Israeli election. So I'm in my opening comments on the panel, I said, differing with Netanyahu is not anti-Semitic. Wanting a Jew to believe in Jesus is not anti-Semitic. And I don't like the word anti-Semitic because it's been way overused the way racism has been.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
I prefer to say Jew hate.
Right.
Jew hate is out. October 7th was Jew hate. Bondi Beach was Jew hate. That's out for Christians. Differing with the policy of Israel on the West Bank or Gaza, even if you're mistaken, even if you're badly mistaken,
right,
that's not Jew hate.
Right, exactly. And so, interestingly enough, and this is the same thing with Mamdani, you might have people who voted for Mamdani doesn't necessarily automatically mean they're socialists. In fact, exit polling in New York City, they were disenchanted. There was no other options. They had Cuomo. They didn't like Cuomo.
Right.
1/4, it was an exit polling, 1/4 of those who voted for the first time Democratic Socialist mayor of New York One quarter of them identified as socialists or, agreeing with socialism and its policies. Many of the other ones, it was grievance-based. They were upset. They're frustrated. They don't like rent control, rent prices, whatever. And they're fed up, but there's no other alternative vision. And so they're just going to go along with it. So in some ways, you might actually be frustrated. You don't know what to think about Israel. You might be frustrated by the whole thing, like foreign aid and whatnot, and endless wars, those types of things. The kind of boomercon play that's been run for a really, 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 really long time. Rhinos, really, really long time. That doesn't necessarily mean you're not pro-Israeli to call those things into question.
Right.
So there you go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So constructively, where do we go from here in terms of Gen Z, in terms of, young people, that they don't go into the Groyper element, the dark element of the so-called right?
The thing that I just mentioned here is that Zionism is a movement that began in the 19th century of Jews wanting to return to their ancestral homeland. You could be an atheist Jew and a Zionist, and you could be an observant Jew and a Zionist for religious reasons, right? Zionism was a cultural, sociological movement, moving Jews back to the homeland that might or might not have been believing in God or the scriptures or whatever. And then Christian Zionism is, most Christian Zionists would be dispensational, not necessarily all of them, but dispensationalism believes that the formation of Israel in 1948 was a fulfillment of prophecy.
Right.
And so the prophetic clock is ticking again. And so dispensational Christians are going to be prone to be Zionists. Jews belong in Israel as part of their homeland because of Genesis 12. The God fulfilled his promise to Abraham. Okay, great. But there's another kind of Zionist, which would be de facto Zionist. All right. Let's say if I'd been alive in the 19th century, I'm not a dispensationalist, so I don't believe that 1948 has anything to do with it. So I don't believe that stuff. But there are 8 million Jews there now.
Right.
De facto Zionism. It's a country now. And they have the right to defend themselves like any other country on the same grounds, on the same terms. And the way I illustrate this is I don't believe in manifest destiny at all, but I still live in Idaho.
Yeah, sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm a de facto manifest destiny guy, even though I don't believe in that doctrine.
Yep.
Right? So I think the thing that cuts to the chase would be this. Israel has the right to defend herself against rocket attacks, against October 7th attacks. And if someone picks a fight with them, we shouldn't bustle in there to interfere. Let Israel defend, they've got their Iron Dome, let them defend themselves, let them retaliate if they're attacked, let them do.
Yeah.
Not our circus, not our monkeys.
Yeah.
Right?
You're right.
And I think, as we mentioned foreign aid, I think foreign aid to all countries, not just Israel, should go to zero, but that would include Palestinians. That would include everybody, right? And just let them sort it out and not be busybodies, not try to be the world's kindergarten teacher.
Yes.
Right. Just let them hash it out.
I wholeheartedly agree. Yeah. And, by the way, so there have been times in which our U.S. foreign policy has hindered their ability, actually, to prosecute their own war, their own case, or whatever, their own justification. They can do what they need to do in order to preserve their freedom. They have the right to defend themselves. If they need to go into Gaza and clean up, if they need to overturn Hamas and make it impossible for them politically to ever return, that's their prerogative. They should be able to do that. I think we've limited them in many ways. The Biden administration certainly limited them and coerced them.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
so
right.
In many ways, I was like, well, we helped to set up that state, but then we're hand-holding the whole time and we're monitoring them and you're special. And so it's like, well, we'll give them aid every year and we sell arms to them as well, and so they can defend themselves, and we supply them with munitions.
I don't mind selling them arms.
Exactly.
I do mind giving them arms.
Right. No, exactly. So they buy them. That's great. But then it's like when they need to go to war to defend themselves, like, no, you can't do that.
Right.
Well, why can't we?
Right.
And I think in many ways we've been a hindrance to them.
Right. And going back to my Reformed covenantal roots, going back to the time of the Reformation, the historic Reformed view of the Jews.
Let's get into this. I want to hear this. Yes.
And this is based on an interpretation of Romans 11.
Right.
There's a word that is thrown around a lot: replacement theology, and the other name for it is supersessionism.
Right.
And supersessionism is the view that the church is Israel now. So the church is now the heir of all the covenant blessings of the Old Testament, that the church is now the new Israel. Now, there are this is my position, but there are hard supersessionists and soft supersessionists. Okay, a hard supersessionist is someone who says that in the illustration of the olive tree in Romans 11,
yep,
the hard supersessionist says the unbelieving Jews were cut out, believing Gentiles were grafted in, and that olive tree is the new Israel. And the Jews who are cut out have no place in God's plans at all anymore. They're on the same level as the Japanese or the Swedes or the Navajo.
Right.
They're not God's chosen people.
Right.
That's hard supersessionism.
Yes.
Soft supersessionism, which would be the position I hold, is that they were cut out of the olive tree. But Paul argues there that if God could graft wild olive branches, Gentiles, into the olive tree, he can certainly regraft the natural olive branches back into the tree. And Paul prophesies that God will do so.
Right.
And that when he does so, that's going to be a huge blessing to the world. All right. So it's, and in Puritan theology, this was called the conversion of the Jews.
You're right.
So throughout the Reformation period and in the century since, this has been the mainstream hope, basically, of Reformed Christians, which is to pray for the conversion of the Jews, because that's the linchpin of world evangelization.
Right.
So if the Great Commission is going to be fulfilled as a consequence of the Jews turning to Christ.
Yeah.
Right? And so pray for the Jews, labor for the conversion of the Jews, love the Jews. And this is why I think that if you look at the church history and you say there are three main branches of the church, broadly considered, there's the Roman Catholic branch, there's the Eastern Orthodox branch, and there's the Protestant branch.
Right.
And the Protestant branch of the church has been around for 500 years, for a quarter of the churches.
And we keep splitting.
Yeah. Well, actually, if I could stop you there.
Yeah.
We split far less than people think.
Sure.
Because what happens is people, Roman Catholic apologists will say, you and your Protestants and your 25,000 denominations.
Yeah.
Well, there's a World Christian Encyclopedia that actually broke groups down in more like grouping Anglicans together and grouping Baptists together, people that have a lot in common. And I don't have the exact numbers at my fingertips, but it's something like the main Protestant groupings are like 26.
Okay, yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And the main Roman Catholic groupings are like 19.
Yes.
Right?
Uh-huh.
So they've got a bunch of, this is not a Protestant problem, it's a people problem.
Sure.
Right? So there's the old joke about the guy who was marooned, Scots Presbyterian, who was marooned on a desert island like Robinson Crusoe. And he was finally rescued after 10 years, and he was giving the captain of the ship a tour of he had a beautiful mahogany tree house that he'd built, and he had acres of farmland, and he had a shed, and he had all these, and they were walking over the path, and they found this little chapel. And the guy said, "You built a chapel?" And he said, Yeah, I did. And they walked a little further and around the bend, and there was another little chapel. And he said, "What's that?" And he said, "That's where I used to go to church."
One guy.
One guy.
Yeah. No, that's good.
So that's a people thing. Now the issue for us here is Christians should pray for the conversion of the Jews.
Yes.
And out of these branches of Christendom, the Reformed Protestant branch historically has had the most friendly attitude toward the Jews out of all Christians. So during the Reformation period, many Jews fled to Holland, a Reformed country,
Right.
because Holland was very welcoming to the Jews. Oliver Cromwell,
Yeah.
opened England back up to the Jews, allowing them to come back. Protestantism has had a healthy working relationship with the Jews, not like smudging the differences between us. I mean, Jesus either rose from the dead or he didn't.
Exactly.
Jesus was either the Messiah of Israel or he wasn't.
Right.
So we're not trying to pretend that we're all saying the same thing,
Right.
because we're not. Jews ought to believe in Jesus. They ought to repent and turn to Christ. That's absolutely the case. But you can be friends with someone. You can be on good terms with someone that you're seeking to evangelize. And Protestants really have to have that attitude toward the Jewish people.
Yes. One thing, I lost my train of thought earlier, but I wanted to go back to something. We were talking about anti-Semitism, and I thought it was really helpful that you call it Jew hate and not that. The Anti-Defamation League has a definition for anti-Semitism, and it even includes the preaching of the gospel is anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
And ironically enough, there were Christians that were kind of duped. You know, I mean, I'm talking about Christians in elected office that were saying, we need to sign on this bill of anti-Semitism, that denounces anti-Semitism, but we got the definition from the ADL. And the same ADL that basically calls white Anglo-Saxon Protestantism white supremacy. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Why are we accepting definitions from the enemy? Those people are the adversary.
That's right. And so I love what you say. I think it's very practical, very common sense. By the way, what I want my dispensational friends to understand is that there is a greater unity among Reformed, among Baptists. Whether you're pre-mill, post-mill, all-mill,
absolutely
there's
right.
a greater unity here. Not everyone need become a dispensationalist in order to recognize Jew hate is wrong, in order to have sufficient reason to be supportive of Israel, right?
Right.
That's it. Doesn't have to be one prescriptive theological system.
Right. I'm a friend of Israel,
yes.
but I'm not a Zionist.
Sure.
It's that simple.
That makes perfect sense. Doug Wilson, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Jumping on the Give Me Liberty podcast.
Yeah, great to be here.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Hey, did you find this helpful? I hope you did. Please like and subscribe, share with a friend, and also go to standingforfreedom.com where you can find more content, articles, podcasts, and our Theology of Politics series, all at standingforfreedom.com.